Greetings YouTube, and welcome to The Rabbit Hole. Today we will be looking at the most important resource in the world, water. Follow me down. Access to clean and safe water has been a necessity for as long as humans have existed. When a resource as essential as water is controlled by corporations and government, it's necessary to look deeper into those authorities' intentions. In April of 2014, the city of Flint, Michigan suffered from toxic water when a group of emergency managers was appointed by Governor Rick Snyder and decided to change Flint's water supply from the treated Detroit Water and Sewage Department to the polluted Flint River in an attempt to save money. The river is contaminated with many heavy metals from years of industrial dumping. The decision has resulted in the poisoning of Flint's population. The disaster is still going on, but before we get into that, let's look back into America's long history with hazardous materials. Follow me down. America, late 1800s, the Industrial Revolution. Sodium fluoride was being used to kill vermin, but soon people realized its toxic effects on humans. The household item made headlines when it slipped into several people's food and killed them. This was nothing, though, compared to the devastation caused by companies like ALCOA, founded in 1888 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. ALCOA, or the Aluminum Company of America, was the worst environmental offender of the late 19th century, killing livestock, devastating crops, and poisoning the farms and farmers surrounding the factory by dumping hazardous waste materials into streams and rivers. Studies were performed on dead livestock, and alarming amounts of fluoride were found in their livers and kidneys. It is also interesting to note that many had lost their teeth. In 1933, the Department of Agriculture released a study about fluoride's toxicity. The study blamed ALCOA as a major environmental offender. Soon after the report was released, ALCOA bought out all the farmers surrounding their factory and their hazardous waste. In 1944, the Manhattan Project was using fluoride as well. Fluoride is the key ingredient to enrich uranium, which is the key ingredient in making atomic and nuclear weapons. The harmful effects of the project's industrial waste were concealed from workers and the public. A man by the name of Andrew W. Mellon, the founder of the Mellon Institute, a scientific research organization that often provided questionable data defending major industrial companies like the asbestos industry, was also a major ALCOA stockholder. It was under this institution that the first data linking fluoride and the prevention of tooth decay appeared. It was aluminum industry-funded scientist Dr. Gerald Cox who first proposed fluoridating public drinking water. The Newburgh-Kingston Caries Fluorine study was taken in 1945 and compares two cities in New York, one fluoridated and one not. It concludes that the fluoridated city had less tooth decay. However, author Christopher Bryson unearthed a number of documents from the Manhattan Project proving that the study was a fabrication. It was created to combat suspicion surrounding the toxic nuclear waste from the industries necessary for the production of atomic and nuclear weapons, and especially to combat suspicion around the aluminum industry and its hazardous byproduct fluoride. January 25th, 1945, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Residents of Grand Rapids became the Manhattan Project's experimental guinea pigs when 107 barrels of fluoride were dumped into their water supply. Muskegon, Michigan was chosen as the control city to compare rates of tooth decay with. The study focused on children and was supposed to monitor their tooth development for 15 to 20 years, thus determining the long-term effects of fluoride on permanent teeth. However, the study was stopped after 5 years when it was concluded that fluoride did indeed benefit permanent tooth development. Many children born at the time the survey started had not even formed permanent teeth by the time it ended. Nevertheless, Muskegon was fluoridated thereafter. Other considerations like how fluoride's effects on people with chronic illness or pregnant women was also not taken into consideration. Writer Alice Terpstra went as far as to say that the children born after 1945 who were exposed to fluoridation were late in producing permanent teeth and had more cavities on the permanent teeth they did produce than those children in the non-fluoridated control city, Muskegon. This information was removed from the published version of this study. The Journal of the American Dental Association released an article written by Peter Dale in 1948. It concluded that fluoride did not prevent cavities. Furthermore, workers in fluoride industries had teeth that seemed to be deteriorating rapidly and had severe gum bleeding. Many had no teeth at all. This information was left out of the study, and instead the published version concluded that fluoride did in fact prevent cavities based on the evidence that no cavities were present in the workers' now toothless heads. There are many more towns that suffered greatly during this time as a result of industry's greed and toxic destruction. Towns like Denora, Pennsylvania were poisoned by fluoride smog. Citizens were never informed that fluoride was the culprit. Instead, other reasons were given for the population's toxic symptoms, such as the weather. Wall Street attorney Oscar R. Ewing, who worked for ALCOA, made the announcement that the United States Public Health Service now favored national water fluoridation. It was time to sell the idea of fluoridation to the public, so who better to head public relations than Edward Bernays, the man better known as the father of spin. Bernays is the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and in 1928 he wrote a book called Propaganda, The Public Mind in the Making. His writing was about the ability to control the mass mind by engineering consent. By playing on self-preservation, aggression, security, and sex, Bernays found it easy to manipulate and control the masses. These tactics birthed a consumerist American culture and wheedled their way into politics, further linking industry with government. Besides the environmental and bodily harm fluoride causes, it also calcifies the pineal gland. This gland is located in the center of the brain. Many claim that this is the point where consciousness enters and leaves our body at the time of birth and death. It secretes DMT and melatonin. DMT can be found in every living creature, and while Western medicine struggles with its purpose, shamans in ancient cultures have called DMT a gateway to other dimensions. For this reason, the pineal gland is also referred to as the third eye, or the eye of Horus. The word pineal is related to the word pine cone, which resembles the shape of the gland. Because of this, we see pine cone symbolism in many ancient cultures who recognize the spiritual power of this part of the brain. Even the Pope's staff currently sports a pine cone. If you can shut down someone's pineal gland, you can essentially turn them into a zombie, a basic consumer existing solely in a three-dimensional low-energy field. This is exactly how fluoride affects the brain, while also doing irreparable physical harm on the body, like inactivating enzymes, increasing the aging process, creating cancerous tumors, weakening the immune system, and causing depression, not to mention death. This hazardous material is being used to keep the average tap water drinking citizen mind-controlled and sick. Industry controls the entire spectrum of fluoride, heavy metals, GMOs, and other toxins. From the factories that make the brain-numbing waste, to the heavy metal water systems that distribute the drug into your drinking water, showers, food, and laundry, to the shopping malls which appeal to your most base consumer desires, which keep you in a cycle of work and spending so you don't have time to question authority, examine yourself, or understand the world around you and the choices that have been made available to you, to the toxin-laden GMO-manufactured food supply created by corporations like Monsanto, which in turn keep you sick and dependent on pharmaceutical companies within the medical industrial complex. It becomes clear that an elaborate money-making scheme has been put in place to enslave the population. Many countries around the world have outlawed fluoride in their drinking water. China, Austria, Belgium, Finland, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, Hungary, and Japan have all concluded that fluoride is toxic and ineffective against tooth decay. In fact, 98% of Europe does not fluoridate, and there are heavy restrictions on GMOs. Many ancient civilizations had perfect teeth and no knowledge of the compound fluoride. We can tell this from skeletal remains. Cultures with the best teeth kept a healthy diet and were often exposed to the element fluorine in their water. Fluorine is an element found in the form of fluorite minerals around the earth. Fluoride is the generic term used to describe any compound combined with fluorine. Basically, ancient civilizations weren't drinking toxic waste and weren't consuming fast food, and despite not having advanced dental care, their teeth are some of the healthiest and long-lasting in existence. For more information about ancient civilizations and their oral hygiene, start digging around the skeletal remains found in ancient Pompeii. Fluoride handlers have to wear hazmat suits when in proximity of the toxin, and often develop illnesses related to fluoride poisoning. When the female workers in one factory complained that their pantyhose would burn off when they arrived at the factory, they were given an extra $1 a day to buy new pantyhose. Companies like Cargill are terrible modern offenders, contributing to the 250,000 tons of fluoride being dumped into our water supply every year. Companies like the Occidental Chemical Corporation were sued during the second half of the 20th century by workers infected with leukemia, emphysema, and toxic brain syndrome, but the company was only fined $200 million, a small slap on the wrist for the multi-billion-dollar company. The Hooker Company is a subsidiary of the Occidental Chemical Corporation, or OCC. Yes, the same Hooker Company responsible for the environmental devastation and poisoning of school children at the Love Canal. The company used the Love Canal as a dumping site and then sold the contaminated land to the Niagara Falls School District for $1. The Hooker Chemical Company has also poisoned the areas around their factories in Florida, Michigan, and California with little regard. The huge corporation is politically active and tries to financially back candidates and judges who will keep their economic interests in mind. The average waste from a phosphorus strip mine includes cadmium, chromium, mercury, nickels, beryllium, arsenic, fluoride, lead, uranium-238, 226, and polonium-210. It is from this toxic goop that the creation of fluoride begins. Fluoride is everywhere. It's in everything. From fluoride-enriched special bottled water labeled baby's first water to being the major component of mood elevator drugs like Zoloft and Prozac. The effects of fluoride are visible in our society. Pain, stiffness, arthritis, white spots and streaking on teeth and nails, chalky, crumbling teeth, early puberty, 10,000 phone calls a year to poison control because children swallowed fluoridated toothpaste and then became sick. Rats exposed to fluoride show lower IQs and lethargy. There's an endless list of data, case studies, and real-life examples proving the terrible effects of fluoride when ingested by humans. The age-old practice of government keeping economic interests above civilian awareness and safety can be represented no more clearly than between the connection of the Manhattan Project and its backing of industrial companies and their attempts made to hide information from the public or pay them off when a situation had gotten too bad. Fluoridation has forced civilians into a complacent consumerist mindset which enslaves and turns us into cogs of the atomic and nuclear war machine. Flint, Michigan, 2016. Another chemical extremely hazardous to humans is lead. Lead has an ancient history, but warnings of its toxic effects have been reported since ancient Roman times by architects like Vitruvius, who noted poisoning in lead workers. He warned about using it in plumbing pipes, but that warning was obviously ignored, as many homes in the United States still have lead plumbing to this day. Flint, Michigan, a poor, predominantly African-American city, is filled with lead pipes and solder. Flint is the epitome of an industrial town seething with toxins from years of dumping into the Flint River by companies like GM and Dow Chemical. When the decision was made to switch the drinking water to the polluted Flint River, tap water turned brown, emitted a foul odor, and people started getting sick. The EPA assured the population that the water was safe to drink and that it was not necessary to add an anti-coercive agent to the very coercive water. The coercive agent would have cost approximately $100 a day. The new water was in fact so coercive that it had been leaching lead from the pipes and solder into the water supply and poisoning Flint's population. Independent journalist Mark Edwards from Virginia Tech investigated the situation and tested the water, finding hazardous levels of lead pouring from household taps. The local government advised its people to boil their water. They also added chlorine to the water. Both of these actions actually increase the level of lead. Lead poisoning leads to attention deficit disorder, hearing loss, kidney failure, reduced IQ, and disrupts body growth. In children, the effects are worse and considered permanent. The effects are also multi-generational. Many have argued that this crisis would be dealt with in a much swifter way if the population were not poor and 57% African American. This form of modern slavery preys upon the weakest, most unheard, and most unable to fight, turning these citizens into docile consumer robots or riddling them with sickness from heavy metals, GMOs, and environmental pollutants, so they have to spend their life savings on drugs and doctor visits, or creating criminals who live the rest of their lives as slaves to the prison system, working for pennies. Scientists agree that there is no safe level of lead in the body. It wasn't until January 5, 2015 that Governor Rick Snyder declared a state of emergency. On January 12th, the National Guard stepped in to distribute bottled water. By this time, though, Flint citizens had already been ingesting, bathing, cooking, and cleaning in the sludge. One home's lead level will register 12,200 parts per billion. 5 ppb calls for concern. 5,000 ppb is considered toxic waste. Now, lead levels have doubled and even tripled in Flint's children, causing irreparable damage. While $100 a day for an anti-coercive agent was deemed unnecessary in an attempt to save money, Rick Snyder now says it may cost $100 million to fix the situation. The lead poisoning is clearly the priority in Flint, but it is also distracting people from the other already present heavy metals being dumped into their water supply like fluoride. There are so many cases which prove that your government has corporate interests in mind first, and that they are willing to do anything to satisfy their greed. Thousands have suffered from mutations and genetic diseases from nuclear waste. Sites like Chernobyl, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 3 Mile Island, Fallujah and Baghdad are just a few of the sites on a long list of industrial imperialism and chemical warfare being carried out by the elite. There are many products you can buy that defluoridate water and detoxify the body from heavy metals. If you have any experience with these, please let me know in the comments below. Do you drink fluoridated water? If not, where do you get your water from? Does anybody have symptoms of fluorosis or lead poisoning? Please leave your answers in the comments below, and until next time, keep digging.